My children ignored my calls for months, so I changed my will to benefit my loyal nurse. When my eldest son Michael stormed into my living room last Tuesday, his face red with fury as he waved a legal document in the air, I couldn't help but smile. "Mom, what is this?" he shouted, pointing at my new will. The look of absolute shock on his entitled face was worth every penny I'd spent on my lawyer. He finally learned not to underestimate his senile old mother. But let me tell you what led to that glorious moment. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Granny's Tales. My name is Margaret. I'm 78 years old, and I've always believed in family, generosity, and a little bit of tough love when needed. For 47 years, I showered my 3 children with affection and support. I thought they respected me. I was about to find out just how wrong I was and what happens when you push a grandma too far. If you've ever felt taken for granted by family or believe that respect for elders isn't just a saying, you'll want to hear this. Drop a comment if you agree, and don't forget to like and subscribe to Granny's Tales for more stories where Grandma gets the last laugh. Let me paint you a picture of the woman I used to be. Or rather, the fool I used to be. After my dear husband Robert passed away 8 years ago, I threw myself into being the perfect mother and grandmother. I had a comfortable nest egg from Robert's life insurance and our paid-off home, and I thought the best way to honor his memory was to take care of our family. You see, Robert and I had worked our entire lives to build something. He was a dedicated electrician for 35 years, and I managed the books for a small accounting firm downtown. We saved every penny we could, lived modestly, and invested wisely. By the time Robert passed, we had accumulated nearly $800,000 in assets, plus our beautiful 3-bedroom home in Maple Grove that was worth another $400,000. We weren't wealthy by today's standards, but we were comfortable, and we were proud. I thought this nest egg was meant to be shared with our children, to help them build their own lives, just as we had built ours. How wrong I was. When my son Michael's construction business hit rough times 3 years after Robert's death, who do you think wrote him a check for $25,000? Not a loan, mind you. A gift. Michael stood in my kitchen, hat in hand, explaining how a client had stiffed him and how he might lose his business. The tears in his eyes reminded me of the little boy who used to come crying to me when he scraped his knee. Of course I helped him, but that $25,000 was just the beginning. 6 months later, Michael was back. This time he needed $15,000 for new equipment. "Mom, this will set me up for years," he promised. "I'll be able to pay you back with interest." I wrote another check, though something in my gut told me I'd never see that money again. When my daughter Sarah and her husband Tom were looking for their first home, they couldn't qualify for the mortgage they wanted. The house they'd fallen in love with was $50,000 more than they could afford. Sarah came to me with tears in her eyes, showing me pictures of this beautiful colonial with a wraparound porch. "It's perfect for the grandchildren, Mom. They'd have their own rooms, and there's a guest suite where you could stay whenever you visit." I refinanced my own home, the home Robert and I had worked so hard to pay off, and gave them the down payment money. $50,000. Sarah cried and hugged me, promising I'd always have a place in their new home. I believed her. My youngest, David, was the dreamer of the family. At 28, he was still finding himself. He'd had a dozen different jobs, 3 different college majors, and more big ideas than I could count. When he decided he wanted to backpack through Europe to gain perspective on life, I knew what was coming. "Mom, this is my chance to really figure out what I want to do with my life," he said, sitting across from me at my kitchen table. "I've got it all planned out. 6 months, 12 countries. I can do it for just $20,000. It's like getting a college education, but better." I looked at my baby boy, now taller than his father had been, and saw that same desperate hope in his eyes that I'd seen when he was 7 and begging for a puppy. I wrote him a check for $20,000 and watched him light up like Christmas morning. That was just the beginning of my generosity. Over the next 5 years, I became the family bank, the free babysitting service, and the eternal safety net. When Michael's business had another rough patch, I gave him another $30,000. When Sarah's husband Tom lost his job, I paid their mortgage. For 4 months, $8,000 in total. When David decided he wanted to start a food truck business, I invested $35,000 in his sure thing venture. The food truck lasted 8 months before David got bored and moved on to his next dream. I babysat my grandchildren every weekend for 3 years straight, so my kids could have date nights. Friday evenings, I'd drive over to Sarah's house to pick up little Emma and Jake. I'd have them until Sunday evening, feeding them, playing with them, taking them to the park, helping with homework. I loved those children dearly, but I began to notice that Sarah and Tom were scheduling more activities during grandma weekends. What started as date nights became weekend getaways, spa retreats, and couples vacations. I cooked Sunday dinners for 12 people every week for 4 years. Every Sunday, without fail, I'd spend Saturday preparing pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and homemade rolls. I'd set my dining table with Robert's mother's china and make sure there were enough chairs for everyone. The kids loved it at first, but gradually the dinners became obligatory. They'd show up, eat quickly while scrolling through their phones, and leave as soon as possible. When little Emma needed expensive orthodontics that insurance wouldn't cover, Grandma Margaret opened her wallet for $6,000. When Jake wanted to go to that fancy computer camp that cost $3,000 for 2 weeks, who do you think paid? When Michael's daughter Sophie needed a car for her 16th birthday, I bought her a reliable Honda Civic for $18,000. I kept a notebook, not intentionally, at first, but my accountant's mind couldn't help tracking the expenses. By the time I totaled it all up, I had given my children over $300,000 in cash gifts over 5 years. Not loans, gifts. Money that came directly out of my retirement fund, my security, my future. But somewhere along the way, my acts of love became expectations. My generosity became entitlement. The thank you, Mom, turned into, you should have. The visits became shorter, the calls less frequent, and the requests for money more demanding. It started small. Michael would call me only when he needed something. The conversations always followed the same pattern. Hi, Mom. How are you? Good. Good. Listen, I was wondering. Sarah began treating me like a free babysitting service, dropping the kids off without asking if I had plans. Mom, I know it's short notice, but Tom and I have this thing tonight. The kids are already in the car. Thanks, you're a lifesaver. David would show up at my door when he was between jobs, which was often eating my food and leaving his laundry, for me to do. The gratitude disappeared entirely. When I gave Michael money for his business, he'd complain that it wasn't enough. When I bought Emma new school clothes, Sarah would criticize my choices. When I prepared David's favorite meal, he'd mention that his ex-girlfriend made it better. Then came the comments. Mom, you're getting confused again, when I'd forget one small detail. Maybe you shouldn't be driving anymore, when I had one minor fender bender in a parking lot. You know, Mom, this house is really too big for you now, whenever they wanted to discuss my future living arrangements. Michael started bringing up my age whenever I questioned his requests for money. Mom, you're not getting any younger? Wouldn't you rather see us benefit from your generosity while you're still here? Sarah would sigh dramatically whenever I asked her to call before dropping the kids off. Mom, we're all busy. We can't schedule our lives around your routine. The writing was on the wall, but I was too blind to read it. I was too busy being the perfect mother, the perfect grandmother, the perfect ATM machine. Things got significantly worse after I turned 75. It was as if that number, 75, flipped. Some switch in my children's minds. Suddenly, I wasn't just their mother anymore. I was their aging mother. their problem to solve, their burden to manage, their asset to protect. The shift was subtle at first, but it grew more obvious with each passing month. Where they used to ask for my opinion, they now made decisions for me. Where they used to request help, they now demanded it. Where they used to show gratitude, they now showed impatience. Michael started talking about power of attorney, just in case something happened. He'd bring it up casually during our rare conversations, always couched in concern for my well-being. "Mom, you should really think about setting up a power of attorney. You know, just in case you get sick or something. It would make everything so much easier for all of us." What he really meant was that it would make accessing my money easier for him. Sarah suggested I move into one of those nice senior communities where I'd have people to talk to. She'd forward me brochures for assisted living facilities, highlighting the activities and amenities. "Look, Mom, they have bridge games and book clubs. You'd love it there. And it would be so much safer than that big house." What she really meant was that she wanted me out of my house so she could sell it and add the proceeds to their inheritance. David, bless his heart, actually had the nerve to ask me if I'd considered gifting them their inheritance early to avoid estate taxes. He sat in my living room, fresh from his latest get-rich-quick scheme failure, explaining how I could save the family money by giving them their inheritance now. "Mom, it's just smart financial planning. You'd rather see us enjoy the money while you're still alive, right?" What he really meant was that he wanted his money now, while he was still young enough to waste it on another harebrained scheme. The phone calls dwindled to once a month, then once every few months. When I called them, I got voicemail. When I left messages, they'd text back hours later with "busy, talk later," or "everything okay?" If I dared to say I was lonely or wanted to see them, I was being manipulative or guilt-tripping. I started keeping track of our communications in a small journal, not out of spite, but out of confusion. I couldn't understand why my children seemed so distant, so busy, so impatient with me. Looking back at those entries now, the pattern is heartbreakingly clear. March 15th. Called Michael about his birthday next week. Voicemail. No callback. March 18th. Texted Sarah about Easter plans. "We'll let you know." Never heard back. March 22nd. David came by asking for money for rent. Stayed for dinner. Left immediately after. April 3rd. Called Michael for his birthday. Voicemail. Texted, "Happy birthday," at 11 p.m. April 10th. Invited. Everyone for Easter dinner. Michael too busy. Sarah already has plans. David will try to make it. Didn't show. The entries go on like this for months, a record of my increasing isolation and their increasing indifference. But the real wake-up call came during family gatherings. The few times I could actually get them all together, their behavior was shocking. They'd spend the entire time on their phones, discussing their own lives, their own problems, their own plans. When I tried to contribute to the conversation, they'd respond with patronizing smiles and change the subject. Last Christmas was the real eye-opener. I spent 3 days cooking their favorite dishes, bought thoughtful presents for everyone, and even flew my grandson Tommy in from college as a surprise. I'd spent $2,000 on gifts and another $500 on food. What did I get in return? Michael and Hader, his wife, spent the entire dinner discussing their upcoming cruise to the Caribbean, a trip I wasn't invited on, funded by the money I'd given him for his struggling business. Sarah complained that the turkey was too dry and the stuffing was too salty. She spent most of the meal texting her friends about their New Year's Eve party plans. David showed up 3 hours late, clearly hungover, and fell asleep on my couch during dessert. But here's the kicker. They sure perked up when I mentioned I was updating my will. "Oh, that's good, Mom," Michael said, suddenly interested in the conversation. "It's important to keep those things current. Let us know if you need help with anything." Sarah chimed in. You should make sure everything is organized, Mom. We don't want to have to figure out a mess later. David, who had been unconscious 5 minutes earlier, suddenly sat up. Yeah, Mom, you should definitely get all that legal stuff sorted out. For the first time in years, I had their complete attention, not because they cared about my well-being, but because they cared about their future inheritance. That night, after they'd all left with their obligatory hugs and promises to call soon, I sat in my empty house surrounded by dirty dishes and crumpled wrapping paper. I looked at the expensive gifts I'd bought them, most of which they'd barely acknowledged, and I realized something painful but liberating. I had raised 3 strangers, the children I'd sacrificed for, the adults I'd supported financially and emotionally, the people I'd loved unconditionally. They didn't see me as their mother anymore. They saw me as an obstacle to their inheritance. The final betrayal came on a Tuesday in March. I'll never forget that day because it was the day I realized I was truly alone in the world, at least alone in my own family. I'd been feeling under the weather for about a week. Nothing serious, just a persistent cold that had knocked me down harder than usual. At my age, even a simple cold can be concerning, and this one had settled in my chest with a cough that kept me up at night. I was tired, weak, and frankly, a little scared. On Monday morning, I called Michael, voicemail. I left a message. Hi, sweetheart, it's Mom. I'm feeling pretty sick and was wondering if you could stop by or maybe we could talk. Give me a call. When you get this. No call back that day. Tuesday morning, I called Sarah, voicemail again. Sarah, honey, it's Mom. I've been sick for almost a week now, and I'm getting a little worried. Could you call me when you get this? I'd really like to talk to you. No callback. Tuesday afternoon, I called David. At least his phone rang before going to voicemail. David, it's Mom. I know you're probably busy, but I'm not feeling well and I could really use some company. Please call me back. Nothing. That Tuesday evening, I was feeling worse. The cough was getting deeper and I was having trouble keeping food down. I decided to take a shower, thinking the steam might help my congestion. That's when disaster struck. I was stepping out of the shower when I felt dizzy. The bathroom mat slipped under my feet and down I went. I hit the floor hard, landing on my right hip and shoulder. The pain was immediate and intense. I lay there, on the cold tile floor, naked and shivering, trying to assess the damage. Nothing seemed broken, but I was bruised and shaken. More than that, I was scared. I was a 78-year-old woman, alone in my house, lying on my bathroom floor with no one to help me. The realization of my vulnerability hit me harder than the fall itself. I managed to get to my phone and called Michael. Voicemail. I tried to keep my voice calm, but I was crying. Michael, I fell in the bathroom. I'm okay, I think. But I'm scared, and I need help. Please call me back. I called Sarah next. Voicemail. Sarah, I fell down. I'm hurt and scared. Please call me back. I even called David, knowing he was probably still in bed at 8 p.m. Voicemail. David, I need help. I fell and I'm hurt. Please call me. I called Michael again an hour later, and again at 10 p.m., and again at midnight. 14 calls in total over the course of that terrible night. 14 times, it went straight to voicemail. I texted Sarah, please call. I fell and need help. I could see that she read it at 2:47 p.m. the next day. No response. I even tried calling my grandchildren. Emma's phone went straight to voicemail. Probably taken away as punishment for something. Jake didn't answer either. I spent that night on my couch, too sore and too scared to go back to my bedroom. I kept my phone next to me, hoping, praying that one of my children would call me back. Every time I dozed off, I'd wake up and check my phone. No missed calls, no messages. The silence was deafening. You know who came to help me? Maria, my cleaning lady who comes twice a week. She found me Wednesday morning, still in my bathrobe, still on the couch, still waiting for my children to care enough to call me back. Maria took one look at me and immediately switched into caregiver mode. "Mrs. Margaret, what happened? You look terrible." When I told her about the fall, about the unanswered calls, about the night I'd spent alone and scared, she was furious. "Those children of yours should be ashamed," she said, helping me to my feet. "Come on, let's get you cleaned up and get some food in you." She helped me shower carefully, made sure I hadn't seriously injured myself, and insisted on staying the night to make sure I was okay. This woman, who barely knew me outside of our employer-employee relationship, showed me more care and concern than my own children had shown me in months. Wednesday morning, Michael finally called me back. Not because he'd gotten my 14 messages. He claimed he'd been in meetings all day, and his phone had been acting up. He called because he needed to reschedule our lunch for the following week. "Sorry, Mom. I was swamped yesterday. Crazy busy at work. What's up?" When I told him I'd fallen and been scared and alone, do you know what he said? His exact words were, "Well, you seem fine now. Falls happen at your age, Mom. Maybe it's time we talked about getting you one of those life alert things. And maybe we should seriously consider that assisted living place Sarah found. This is exactly the kind of thing we've been worried about. Not, 'Are you okay?' Not, 'I'm sorry I wasn't there.' Not, 'Let me come check on you.' Not even, 'I'm sorry I didn't call you back.' Just a casual suggestion that maybe I needed to be put away." When I told Sarah about the fall, her response was even worse. "Mom, you're being dramatic. You said yourself that nothing was broken. Maybe you shouldn't be taking showers when you're home alone. That's just common sense." David's response was the most David response possible. "Mom, you really need to get that life alert thing." "What? If something serious had happened? We can't be expected to drop everything every time you have a little accident." A little accident. That's what my fall, my fear, my night of terror was to them. A little accident. An inconvenience. A reminder that their aging mother was becoming a liability. That's when I knew. That's when I realized that to my own children, I wasn't their mother anymore. I was a problem to be managed, a responsibility to be delegated, a checkbook with legs that was getting inconveniently frail. The woman who had given them life, who had sacrificed for them, who had loved them unconditionally for decades, was now just another item on their to-do lists. Deal with Mom was probably somewhere between pick up dry cleaning and get oil changed. That's when Margaret the doormat died, and Margaret the strategist was born. I spent the next week in a strange state of clarity. It was as if the fall had knocked something loose in my brain. Not my faculties, but my illusions. For the first time in years, I saw my situation clearly, without the rose-colored glasses of maternal love. I looked at my bank statements and saw the truth in black and white. Over the past 5 years, I had given my children over $300,000 of my retirement savings. $300,000. Money that Robert and I had worked our entire lives to save. Money that was supposed to ensure my security in my golden years. What had I received in return? 14 unanswered phone calls when I needed them most. I looked at my will, which left everything divided equally among my 3 children, and I laughed bitterly. They were so confident in their inheritance, they couldn't even be bothered to return my phone calls. They saw my money as already theirs. My house is already sold. My care is already someone else's responsibility. But here's what they didn't understand about their old mother. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't senile. I wasn't the doddering old woman they'd convinced themselves I was. I was still the same woman who had managed books for 30 years, who had raised 3 children, who had helped Robert build a successful life from nothing. I was still Margaret, and Margaret was far from finished. First, I called my lawyer, Henry Pemberton, who'd been handling my affairs for 20 years. Henry had been Robert's friend before he became our attorney. and he'd watched my children grow up. He knew them, he knew me, and he knew the family dynamics better than anyone. "Henry," I said, "I need to make some changes to my estate planning. Big changes." Henry's office was in the same building it had been for decades, with the same wood, paneling, and the same smell of old leather and legal documents. When I told him what I wanted to do, he leaned back in his chair and studied me carefully. "Margaret, this is a significant decision. Are you sure you've thought this through?" I showed him my notebook, the one where I'd been tracking my children's calls, visits, and requests for money. I told him about the fall, about the 14 unanswered calls, about their casual dismissal of my fear and pain. Henry's expression grew darker as I spoke. "Margaret, I've known those kids since they were babies. This isn't the family Robert would have wanted to see." "No," I agreed. "It's not. And it's not the family I raised them to be. But it's the family they've chosen to become." Henry helped me understand my options. I could disinherit them entirely, but that would leave my will open to legal challenges. Better to leave them something small, enough to show they weren't forgotten, but not enough to matter. I could set up trusts with conditions, but that would require ongoing management and could be contested. Or I could do something simpler and more direct. I could choose to leave my estate to someone who had actually shown me love and respect. That's when I had my second important conversation. With Maria. Maria Rodriguez was 54 years old, a widow like myself. Her husband had died in a construction accident 3 years earlier, leaving her to raise their daughter Isabella alone. Isabella was 16, a bright girl with dreams of becoming a nurse. Maria worked 2 jobs to support them, cleaning houses during the day and working at a diner 3 nights a week. She'd been cleaning my house for 3 years, but over the past few months, she'd become something more. She was the one who noticed when I wasn't eating well. She was the one who insisted I go to the doctor when I was feeling off. She was the one who found me after my fall and took care of me without being asked. "Maria," I said to her the day after my fall, "how would you feel about working for me full-time, as my companion and caregiver?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Mrs. Margaret, I would be honored, but I cannot afford to give up my other jobs. Isabella and I, we need the income. What if I told you I could pay you more than both your jobs combined, plus provide health insurance and help with Isabella's college fund?" Maria sat down heavily in my kitchen chair. "Mrs. Margaret, you don't understand. I make almost $40,000 a year working both jobs. I cannot ask you to pay me that much to keep house and keep you company." "Maria, I'm not asking you to keep house. I'm asking you to be my family." Over the next hour, I explained my situation to Maria. I told her about my children's neglect, about the money I'd given them, about how alone I felt in my own family. I told her about my assets, about my comfortable retirement savings, about my desire to leave my estate to someone who would actually appreciate it. Maria was shocked. "Mrs. Margaret, your children, they would be so angry." "Let them be angry. They've had 47 years to show me love and respect. They've chosen to show me entitlement and neglect." I offered Maria a salary of $50,000 a year, plus full health insurance, plus a guarantee that Isabella's college would be paid for. In exchange, she would be my live-in companion, helping me with daily tasks, providing companionship, and giving me the peace of mind that comes with knowing someone cares. She accepted, but with conditions. "Mrs. Margaret, if your children change, if they start treating you better, you must promise me you'll consider changing your will back. I don't want to be the reason your family falls apart." "Maria, my family fell apart long before you came along. You're not breaking it up. You're helping me put the pieces back together." I spent the next month quietly documenting everything. Every unreturned phone call, every canceled visit, every time they saw me as an ATM instead of their mother. I also started paying very close attention to what they said about me when they thought I wasn't listening. During one of David's rare Visits. I overheard him on the phone with someone, probably a girlfriend. Yeah, I'm at my mom's house. No, she's not sick or anything, just wanted to have dinner. I know, it's such a waste of time, but I need to stay on her good side, you know? She's loaded, and she won't be around forever. During a family barbecue at Michael's house, I heard him talking to his wife about me. We really need to start thinking about what to do with Mom. She's getting more scattered, and that house is too much for her. Plus, do you know what that property is worth now? We could sell it and use the money to buy the lake house we've been looking at. Sarah was more direct. During a phone call with her sister-in-law, which I accidentally overheard when she called me and didn't realize the line was still connected. I swear, Tom, sometimes I think Mom is faking half of this stuff just to get attention. She's not as frail as she pretends to be, but we need to be patient, you know? We've got too much riding on this to mess it up now. The ammunition they gave me was overwhelming. They weren't just neglecting me, they were actively planning my future around their inheritance. I was nothing more than an asset to be managed until I died, and they could cash in. Well, I had news for them. This asset was about to be redistributed. My revenge unfolded in 3 carefully planned phases. I'm not proud of the fact that I needed to resort to these tactics, but I'm not ashamed either. Sometimes, people need to learn lessons the hard way. Phase 1 was subtle. I started saying no. This was harder than it sounds. For years, I had been conditioned to say yes to everything my children asked for. Money? Yes. Babysitting? Yes. Cooking? Yes. Whatever they needed, whenever they needed it, the answer was always yes. But now, when Michael called asking for another loan for his business, this time $20,000 for a can't-miss opportunity, I sweetly told him I was tightening my budget on Henry's advice. You know, sweetheart, Henry thinks I should be more conservative with my spending at my age. I need to make sure I have enough for my own care as I get older. The silence on the other end of the line was telling. But Mom, this is different. This is an investment. I'll pay you back with interest. I'm sure you would, dear, but I just can't right now. I'm sure you understand. He didn't understand. He argued for 20 minutes about how this opportunity wouldn't wait, how I was being overly cautious, how I was missing out on helping my family, but I held firm. When Sarah wanted me to babysit so she could go to a spa weekend with her friends, I mentioned that Maria and I had plans to go to the botanical gardens. Oh, I'm sorry, honey, but Maria and I are going to spend the day at the gardens. We've been planning it for weeks. Can't you reschedule? This spa weekend is important for my mental health. I'm sure it is, dear, but I can't disappoint Maria. Maybe you could ask one of your friends to babysit or hire a sitter. The concept of actually paying for childcare seemed to offend her. When David showed up at my door expecting dinner and laundry service, I handed him takeout menus and directions to the nearest laundromat. Oh, David, I'm sorry, but I didn't know you were coming. Maria and I already ate, and I'm not really up for cooking tonight. There's a great Chinese place that delivers, and I think there's a laundromat just down the street. But Mom, you always cook when I come over. I used to, sweetheart, but I'm getting older. I can't always be prepared for unexpected visits. They were confused but not concerned. After all, they still had their inheritance to look forward to. These were just temporary inconveniences, the quirks of an aging mother. They'd humor me for now, and when I was gone, they'd have what they really wanted anyway. Phase 2 was more direct. I had Henry draw up a new will. This wasn't done in anger or haste. It was done with the cold calculation of a woman who had finally seen her children's true colors. The process took several weeks. Henry wanted to make sure I was absolutely certain about my decision, and he wanted to ensure that the will would be legally bulletproof. We included medical evaluations to prove my mental competency, detailed documentation of my children's behavior, and testimony from witnesses who had observed the family dynamics. My new will left my house and the majority of my assets to Maria, with generous provisions for Isabella's education and future. My children would each receive exactly $1,000, enough that they couldn't claim they were forgotten, but little enough to make a crystal clear point. But I wasn't done. I also set up a trust that would pay for a full-page ad in our local newspaper's obituary section when I passed, detailing exactly why I'd made this decision. Every unreturned phone call, every dismissive comment, every time they treated me like a burden instead of their mother would be there in black and white for the whole town to see. I also included a detailed letter to be read at the will's execution, explaining my reasoning. Not out of spite, but out of a desire for them to understand the consequences of their actions. But here's the thing about revenge. It's only satisfying if you get to see it happen. And I didn't want to wait until I was dead to see justice served. I wanted to watch their faces when they realized what they'd lost. Phase 3 was the reveal. I planned it like a military operation. I decided to invite all 3 children over for Sunday dinner, something I hadn't done in months. I made the calls personally, emphasizing how much I missed having the whole family together. They probably expected another handout or to discuss my care arrangements, but they all agreed to come. The date was set for the last Sunday in June. I spent the week preparing, but not in the way I used to. I wasn't cooking for 3 days or buying expensive groceries. Instead, I was preparing emotionally for what would probably be the last family dinner we'd ever have. Maria helped me plan the meal, nothing too elaborate, just a simple roast, with vegetables. She offered to stay and serve, but I asked her to leave before the family arrived. This was something I needed to do myself. They arrived within minutes of each other, which was suspicious in itself. Had they planned this? Were they coming together to present some kind of united front? Michael brought his wife Jennifer, Sarah brought her husband Tom, and David came alone. The grandchildren weren't invited. I wanted the adults to hear this without distractions. Dinner conversation was stilted. They kept glancing at each other, and I could tell they were waiting for something. Finally, Michael cleared his throat. "Mom, we've been talking, and we're a little worried about you." Here it comes, I thought. Living alone in this big house, the fall you had last month, the way you've been different lately. We think it might be time to consider some changes. Sarah jumped in. "We found this lovely assisted living community just 20 minutes from my house. They have activities, medical care on site, and you'd have people to talk to all the time." David nodded enthusiastically. "And Mom, we could sell this house and use the money to pay for the best care available. You'd never have to worry about finances again." I looked at the 3 of them, my own children, sitting at my table, eating my food, planning my future without my input. This was it. This was the moment I'd been preparing for. I stood up and cleared my throat. "Children, I have an announcement to make. I've updated my will." They perked up immediately. Michael actually rubbed his hands together, and I saw Jennifer elbow him to stop. Sarah leaned forward eagerly. David, who had been slouching in his chair, suddenly sat up straight. "As you know, your father and I worked very hard to build a comfortable life. This house, our investments, our savings. It's all been managed carefully to ensure our family's future." I paused, watching their faces. Sarah was practically glowing with anticipation. Tom was calculating numbers in his head. I could see him doing the math. Michael was trying to look solemn and appropriate, but failing miserably. "I've decided to leave the bulk of my estate to someone who has shown me true love, respect, and care in my golden years. Someone who answers when I call, who cares when I'm sick, who treats me like family." David was nodding approvingly, probably assuming I was about to announce some kind of equal distribution among them. Maybe he thought he was getting a larger share for being the baby of the family. "I'm leaving almost everything to Maria." The silence was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. 3 faces went from eager anticipation to complete shock in the span of a heartbeat. It was like watching a slow-motion auga car crash, if car crashes could be deeply satisfying. Michael was the first to find his voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. "What did you just say?" I said, "I'm leaving my estate to Maria Rodriguez, my companion and caregiver. You three will each receive $1,000, enough for a nice dinner out. I thought that was generous, considering how often you've taken me out lately." The explosion was immediate and spectacular. Michael jumped to his feet so quickly he knocked over his chair. "What the hell are you talking about? You're leaving everything to the cleaning lady?" "She's not just a cleaning lady, Michael. She's been more of a family to me than any of you have been in years." Sarah burst into tears, not the genuine tears of grief, but the angry, frustrated tears of someone whose plans have been destroyed. "Mom, you can't be serious. What about Emma and Jake? What about their college funds? What about our future?" "What about it, Sarah? You've never included me in your future plans. Why should I include you in mine?" David was sputtering, his face turning red. "This is insane. You're not thinking clearly. Mom, you need help. This is exactly what we were talking about. You're not making rational decisions anymore." I laughed. Actually laughed. "Oh, David, I'm thinking more clearly than I have in years. For the first time in a long time, I'm making decisions based on what I want, not what you want." Jennifer, Michael's wife, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "Mrs. Margaret, you're obviously upset about something. Why don't we all calm down and talk about this rationally?" "I am calm, Jennifer. I'm calmer than I've been in months, and I'm not upset. I'm liberated." Michael was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. "Mom, think about what you're saying. You're talking about giving away our inheritance, our father's legacy, to a stranger." "Maria isn't a stranger, Michael. She's been here for me when none of you were. She found me after I fell, took care of me when I was sick, and treated me with respect when you treated me like a burden." "But Mom," Sarah wailed, "we're your children. We're your family." "Are you?" I asked quietly. "Because family members return phone calls. Family members visit without needing money. Family members don't plot to put their mother in a home so they can sell her house." The room went silent again. They hadn't expected me to know about their conversations, their plans, their casual discussions of my future. Tom, who had been quiet throughout this exchange, finally spoke. "Mrs. Margaret, I think you're being a bit unfair. We've all been busy, but that doesn't mean we don't care about you." "Tom, when I fell in my bathroom and called for help, do you know how many times I tried to reach your wife? 14 times. I left messages, I sent texts, I begged for help. Sarah read my text asking for help and didn't respond for 18 hours. That's not being busy. That's being heartless." Sarah looked stricken. "Mom, I didn't realize." "You didn't realize because you didn't care enough to pay attention. You were too busy planning your spa weekends and your dinner parties to worry about your aging mother." David tried a different approach. "Mom, even if you're angry with us, you can't just give everything away to someone you barely know. What if she's taking advantage of you? What if she's manipulating you?" That's when the front door opened and Maria walked in. She wasn't supposed to be there. She'd gone to the grocery store, but she must have forgotten something. She took one look at the scene in my dining room and started to back out. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Margaret. I didn't know you had company. I'll come back later." "No, Maria, please stay. I want you to meet my children." The room was electric with tension. My children stared at Maria like she was some kind of threat, which I suppose she was, a threat to their inheritance. But Maria surprised us all. She looked at my 3 children, these adults who were red-faced and furious, and she spoke with quiet dignity. "Your mother called you 14 times when she fell. I found her crying and alone on her couch, still in her bathrobe, still waiting for one of you to care enough to call her back." Michael started to interrupt, but Maria held up her hand. "For 3 years, I have watched this beautiful, generous. Woman give you everything while you gave her nothing but excuses. She deserves better children. Since she cannot have better children, she will have a better family with me. Then she turned to me and I saw tears in her eyes. Mrs. Margaret, if this causes you trouble with your family, I cannot accept your generosity. I will not be the reason your children hate you. I stood up, walked over to Maria and put my arm around her shoulders. Maria, you're not causing trouble with my family. You are my family. These people, I gestured to my children, had 47 years to show me love and respect. They chose to show me entitlement and neglect. The decision is final. Michael was incredulous. Mom, you can't be serious. You're going to destroy our family over hurt feelings? I'm not destroying anything, Michael. You destroyed this family when you decided I was more valuable as an inheritance than as a mother. Sarah was crying harder now. Mom, please, we can change. We can do better. We can spend more time with you. Call you more often. Sarah, sweetheart, I'm 78 years old. I don't have time to wait for you to become the children I raised you to be. I need family now, not someday. David made one last desperate attempt. Mom, what about Dad? What would he think about you giving away everything he worked for to a stranger? I looked at my youngest son, and for a moment, I saw the little boy who used to crawl into my lap when he was scared. But that little boy was gone, replaced by a man who saw me as a bank account with a pulse. David, your father would be ashamed of the people you've become. He would be heartbroken to see how you've treated me, and he would be proud of me for finally standing up for myself. The dinner ended with shouting, crying, and threats. Michael stormed out, vowing to contest the will. Sarah left in tears, sobbing about how I was ruining her children's future. David tried one more time to convince me I was making a mistake, then left when I refused to listen. As the door slammed behind them, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal threats, emotional manipulation, and family drama. But for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my own life. Michael hired a lawyer to contest the will, but Henry had done his job well. The medical evaluations proved I was of sound mind. The documentation of my children's behavior was extensive, and the will was ironclad. Michael's lawyer took one look at the evidence and advised him to save his money. Your mother is clearly competent, and her reasoning is well documented. You don't have a case. Michael didn't give up easily. He tried to have me declared incompetent, but that backfired spectacularly. The court-appointed psychiatrist found me to be articulate, logical, and completely aware of my circumstances and decisions. The judge was not amused by Michael's attempt to have his mother declared incompetent, simply because she'd changed her will. Sarah tried the guilt approach, bringing Emma and Jake to cry and beg Grandma to reconsider. It was heartbreaking to see those children, who had no idea what was really going on, being used as pawns in their parents' greed. I hugged those babies tight and told them I loved them. Grandma will always love you, I said. But your parents need to learn that love is something you show, not something you inherit. I also set up college funds for Emma and Jake, separate from my will. They would be provided for, but their parents would have no access to the money. It was my way of ensuring the children wouldn't suffer for their parents' mistakes. Sarah was furious when she learned about the college funds. You're trying to control us from beyond the grave, she screamed during one of our final phone conversations. No, Sarah, I'm trying to protect my grandchildren from parents who see them as meal tickets. David, surprisingly, was the first to break. He showed up at my door about a month after the dinner, sober and humble. I hadn't seen him sober in years, and it was jarring. Mom, I'm sorry. I know I've been a terrible son. I don't care about the money anymore. I just want my mother back. I looked at this man, my baby boy, and saw genuine remorse in his eyes. David, Sit down. Let's talk. We talked for hours that day. Really talked. For the first time in years. He admitted to his drinking problem, his financial irresponsibility, his resentment toward me for always bailing him out. He'd been in AA for 3 weeks and was finally seeing his life clearly. Mom, I realize now that I never respected you. I saw you as a safety net, not as a person. I took advantage of your love, and I'm ashamed of myself. It was the first genuine apology I'd heard from any of my children. David, I'm proud of you for getting sober. But I need to see real change. Not just words. I know, Mom. I'm not asking you to change your will. I'm just asking for a chance to be your son again. From that day forward, David started coming by every week. He treated Maria with respect and kindness, often bringing her flowers or helping with yard work. He was trying to make amends, not just with me, but with the person who had become my family. Michael and Sarah, however, remained angry and resentful. They couldn't understand why I'd chosen Maria over them, because they couldn't see past their own entitlement to understand what Maria had given me. Michael spread rumors around town that Maria had manipulated me, that she was taking advantage of a lonely old woman. But people in our community had seen how my children treated me, and they'd seen how Maria cared for me. The rumors fell flat. Sarah tried to turn the grandchildren against me, telling them that Grandma didn't love them anymore because she'd given their inheritance to someone else. But children are smarter than we give them credit for. Emma asked me directly, Grandma, Mom says you don't love us anymore. Is that true? I sat Emma down and explained in age-appropriate terms that Grandma loved her very much, but that her parents had hurt Grandma's feelings by not being kind to her. Sometimes, Emma, when people don't treat you nicely, you have to make hard decisions to protect yourself. But Grandma, I love you. I always want to see you. And I love you too, sweetheart. You can always come see me, but you'll need to ask your parents to bring you. Sarah was furious that I'd spoken to Emma directly, but I'd reached my limit with her manipulation tactics. As the months passed, life with Maria became everything I'd hoped it would be. She moved into my guest room, and her presence transformed my house from a lonely monument to the past into a warm, living home. Maria was an excellent companion. She was intelligent, funny, and endlessly patient with my old lady quirks. She spoke 3 languages and had traveled extensively before her husband's death. She'd worked as a translator before becoming a widow and having to take whatever jobs she could find to support Isabella. We developed routines that suited both of us. Maria would make coffee in the morning while I read the newspaper. We'd have breakfast together and plan our day. Sometimes we'd work in the garden, sometimes we'd go shopping, sometimes we'd just sit and talk. Maria taught me Spanish, and I helped her with her English writing skills. She was working on getting her translator certification back, and I encouraged her to pursue it. With the financial security I was providing, she could afford to take the time to rebuild her career. Isabella was a delight. She was shy at first, unsure of her place in this new arrangement, but she quickly became the granddaughter I'd always hoped for. She was respectful, curious, and grateful for every opportunity. When I offered to help with her college expenses, she cried and hugged me. Mrs. Margaret, I will make you proud. I promise. Isabella, you already make me proud. Just be yourself. The 3 of us became a family in the truest sense. We ate dinner together, watched movies, celebrated holidays, and supported each other through difficult times. When Isabella was stressed about her SATs, I helped her study. When Maria was sad about her husband's death anniversary, I held her while she cried. When I was having a bad day with my arthritis, they both fussed over me until I felt better. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not obligatory, not conditional, not transactional. Just love, pure and simple. My health improved dramatically. Having people who cared about me, who noticed when I wasn't feeling well, who encouraged me to stay active and engaged. It was like having a new lease on life. I was more energetic, more optimistic, and happier than I'd been in years. I also started volunteering again. With Maria's encouragement, I began working with a local literacy program, teaching adults to read. I'd always been good with people, and it felt wonderful to be useful again, to be valued for my skills and experience rather than just my bank account. Maria and I traveled together, something I'd never had the courage to do alone. We took a cruise to Alaska, visited the Grand Canyon, and spent a wonderful week in Santa Fe. We were two widows exploring the world together, and it was glorious. People in town began to see us as a unit. Margaret and Maria, they'd say, as if we were an old married couple. In many ways, we were. We were two women who had chosen to build a life together, based on mutual respect and genuine affection. My children's reactions to my new happiness varied. David was genuinely pleased to see me thriving. He'd often comment on how much better I looked, how much more energetic I seemed. Michael and Sarah, however, seemed almost offended by my contentment. They'd expected me to be miserable without them, to realize my mistake and come crawling back. Instead, I was living my best life at 78, and they couldn't stand it. The final confrontation came on my 79th birthday. I had planned a small celebration with Maria, Isabella, David, and a few friends from my volunteer work. It was exactly the kind of party I wanted. Intimate, warm, and filled with people who genuinely cared about me. Michael and Sarah weren't invited. I'd learned that my happiness didn't require their presence, and their presence certainly didn't contribute to my happiness. But Michael showed up anyway. He arrived just as we were cutting the cake, storming into my house without knocking. Maria immediately stood up, positioning herself between Michael and me. Isabella looked frightened. David jumped up, ready to defend me if necessary. "Mom, this has gone on long enough," Michael announced. "I'm here to talk sense into you." "Michael, you weren't invited. Please leave." "I'm not leaving until you hear what I have to say. You're destroying our family over a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding, Michael. I understand perfectly. You want my money more than you want me." "That's not true. We love you, Mom. We've always loved you." "Then show me. Show me the love you claim to have. When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you visited without asking for money? When was the last time you treated me like your mother instead of your retirement plan?" Michael looked around the room at the people gathered for my birthday. Maria, Isabella, David, my friends from the literacy program. For the first time, I think he saw what he'd lost. Not just the inheritance, but the relationship, the love, the family. "Mom, he started, but his voice broke. "Michael, it's too late. You had 47 years to be my son. You chose to be my burden instead. But what about forgiveness? What about second chances? What about family?" I looked at my eldest son, this man I'd raised from a baby, and I felt something I'd never felt before. Indifference. The love was still there, buried deep, but it was overshadowed by disappointment and exhaustion. "Michael, I forgive you. I forgive all of you." But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to the way things were. It means letting go of the anger and moving forward. I've moved forward. I have a new family now, one that values me for who I am, not what I can give them. "She's not your family," Michael exploded, pointing at Maria. "She's a stranger, a gold digger. She's manipulating you." That's when David stepped forward. "Michael, stop. Just stop. Look around you. Look at how happy Mom is. Look at how well she's being cared for. Look at how much better she looks than she did when we were in her life." "David, don't tell me you're buying into this nonsense too." "I'm buying into the truth, Michael. The truth is that we were terrible children. We took advantage of Mom's love. We ignored her when she needed us, and we treated her like a bank account. Maria didn't steal Mom from us. We drove her away. Michael looked at David with disgust. You're just sucking up to her because you want back in the will. No, Michael. I'm acknowledging the truth because I'm sober now, and I can see clearly for the first time in years. We lost the right to call ourselves her children when we stopped acting like children and started acting like vultures. The room was silent except for the sound of Michael's heavy breathing. He looked around one more time, taking in the scene. His mother surrounded by people who loved her, celebrating her birthday with genuine joy and affection. Fine, he said finally. Have it your way, Mom. But don't come crying to us when you realize you've been played. I won't, I said quietly. I haven't cried over you in months. He left without another word, and I never saw him again. That was 2 years ago. I'm 81 now, and I can honestly say these have been the happiest years of my life since Robert died. Maria and I have settled into a comfortable routine. Isabella graduated high school with honors and is now in her second year of nursing school. She comes home every weekend, and we have wonderful family dinners together. David has been sober for over 3 years now. He's working steady construction jobs, has his own apartment, and is dating a lovely woman named Patricia. He visits every Sunday, and we've rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect rather than financial dependence. Michael and Sarah have never forgiven me for changing my will. They've written me off entirely, which is perhaps the most honest thing they've ever done. They've told people in town that I'm senile, that Maria is controlling me, that I've lost my mind. But the people who matter know the truth, that I've finally found my mind. I've updated my will twice since that first change. The first update was to increase Isabella's college fund and to add a provision for David, not a large inheritance, but enough to show that his efforts to make amends had been noticed and appreciated. The second update was to establish a scholarship, fund for children of single mothers, to be administered by Maria after my death. My estate lawyer estimates that after all my gifts and provisions, my children will still receive their $1,000 each. Adjusted for inflation, it might be $200 by the time I pass. I think that's fair. It's more than they've given me in recent years. People often ask me if I regret my decision. Do I miss my children? Do I wish things had been different? Of course I wish things had been different. I wish I had raised children who valued love over money, who understood that family is about showing up for each other, who recognized that respect is earned through actions, not inherited through blood. But I don't regret my decision. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret making it. I've learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. It's never too late to demand the respect you deserve. It's never too late to choose your own family. I've learned that blood doesn't always make you family, and family doesn't always share your blood. Maria and Isabella are my family now, in every way that matters. They love me for who I am, not for what I can give them. They show up when I need them. They celebrate my victories and comfort me in my defeats. I've learned that financial generosity without emotional reciprocity is just enabling. I spent years thinking that if I gave my children enough money, enough support, enough sacrifices, they would love me the way I loved them. Instead, I taught them that my love was conditional on their needs, and their love was conditional on my giving. I've learned that being alone is better than being taken for granted. The loneliness I felt when I was ignored by my children was far worse than any loneliness I might have felt if I'd cut ties with them earlier. Most importantly, I've learned that it's never too late to be happy. At 81, I'm having adventures, making new friends, and building new relationships. I'm valued for my wisdom, my humor, and my companionship. I'm not just existing, I'm living. And that's how this old grandma taught them a lesson they won't soon forget. Sometimes you have to remind people that wisdom and the purse strings often comes with age. Here's what I want you to understand. Being a parent doesn't mean being a doormat. Loving your children doesn't mean accepting disrespect. And being elderly doesn't mean being powerless. If you're a parent reading this, love your children, but don't enable them. Support them, but don't sacrifice your own well-being for their convenience. Give them roots and wings, but don't let them treat you like a bank account. If you're an adult child reading this, remember that your parents are people, not just providers. They have feelings, needs, and dreams that extend beyond your inheritance. They deserve your time, your attention, and your respect, not just your birthday cards and holiday visits. If you're an elderly person reading this, remember that you still have power. You still have choices. You still have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. Don't let anyone convince you that you're a burden or that you should be grateful for the bare minimum of attention. Family isn't just about blood. It's about love, respect, and showing up when it matters. Real family members don't have to be asked to care. They don't have to be reminded to call. They don't see you as an obligation or an inheritance. They see you as a person worthy of love. Maria showed me what real family looks like, and I'm grateful every day for her presence in my life. She didn't just become my caregiver. She became my daughter, my friend, and my companion. She showed me that it's possible to build new relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection, even at my age. Isabella has given me the joy of being a grandmother to a child who appreciates me. She asks about my day, listens to my stories, and includes me in her dreams for the future. She's shown me that young people can be taught to value their elders if those elders demand to be valued. David has shown me that people can change, that it's never too late to make amends, and that forgiveness is possible when it's earned through actions, not just words. What do you think? Was my approach too harsh, or did they get exactly what they deserved? Have you ever had to lay down the law with entitled family members? Have you ever had to choose between being loved and being respected? Share your stories and opinions in the comments. I love a good chat. Have you ever felt taken for granted by your family? Have you ever had to make difficult decisions to protect your own well-being? Have you ever discovered that the people you thought were family were really just waiting for you to die? If you enjoyed watching this family learn a valuable lesson, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Subscribe to Granny's Tales for more stories of wisdom, justice, and the power of standing up for yourself, and hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when a new story drops. Thanks for listening, and remember, don't underestimate Grandma. We've got more wisdom, more strength, and more tricks up our sleeves than you might think. We've lived long enough to know the difference between love and manipulation, between family and users, between generosity and enabling. Until next time, this is Margaret reminding you that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Demand the respect you deserve, and choose the family that truly loves you. Age is just a number, but dignity is timeless. And to my former children, if you're watching this, I hope you've learned something. I hope you understand now what you lost. It wasn't just an inheritance. It was a relationship with a mother who loved you unconditionally, even when you didn't deserve it. I hope you'll be better parents to your children than you were children to me. But if you haven't learned, if you're still angry, if you still think I was wrong, well, that's your choice. I'm too old and too happy to waste any more time on regret. I'll be here, living my best life with my chosen family for however many years I have left. And when I'm gone, I'll leave behind a legacy of standing up for myself, of choosing love over obligation, and of proving that it's never too late to be happy. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Now, who wants to hear about the time I caught my neighbor trying to steal my prize-winning roses? That's a tale for another day. Stay strong, stay proud, and never let anyone convince you that you don't deserve respect just because you're getting older. You've earned every bit of wisdom you have, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.